Hello and welcome to Vintage Times. My name is Kathy Rager and I'm the Senior Services Coordinator for Downers Grove Township and your host for this program. On previous programs, we've talked about senior housing in our series Housing 101 and Housing 102. This gave our viewers an idea of the types of housing that exist in our area. This can be very confusing, however, when you're starting from scratch or you're in crisis mode, trying to figure out housing for yourself or perhaps a loved one. On today's program, I have a very special guest. Her name is Kari She is senior living expert. I believe she can shed some light on the journey that people undertake at this age, especially when they're considering a lifestyle change. Welcome to the program, Kari. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your background is?
So I'm Kari Quirin, and I've lived in Downers Grove my entire life. I'm raising my 3 kids here. I've been in senior living now. This is 23 years for me. I started working for Marriott Senior Living Services. Marriott Hotels did have a senior living division at one point. And in 2003, they sold to Sunrise Senior Living. So I worked for them through that whole process, and that they grandfathered all of us in. In 2007, I found out about senior living experts through an old colleague, and I've been with them ever since.
Well, what does a senior living expert do? What is that?
So basically, we help seniors and their families find senior living options in the Chicagoland area, city and suburbs. It's an overwhelming process. The market is saturated in Chicago, so the average consumer doesn't understand what the communities consist of and what level of care they are, and if their loved one would fit in those communities. So we help navigate our clients through the process, define the levels of care for them. We base our referrals off of the location that is appropriate for the client, the budget, of course, and then are we dealing with a diagnosis of some sort, or is it just a lifestyle change that the senior is looking for? So based on those criteria, we match them to communities that would meet their needs best.
So you cover quite a spectrum of activity, in your career. Is this something new to the housing landscape? I don't know if I ever heard of that back a few years.
There is a nationwide provider that does what I do, that's been around for probably 20 years or so, but I still feel like it's a segment that, the average consumer doesn't know exists. So I equate what we do as being similar to a realtor, but for senior living. So a lot of people say, I didn't realize someone like you existed. I wish I knew. Maybe 2 years ago, I was helping my mom or my father-in-law, look for a new lifestyle. And had I known a position like yours existed, I would have used that service. So it's not new necessarily, maybe 20 years, but I feel like we're still trying to get the word out there that we're here to help.
Well, and I think, I know we've talked on this program before about the baby boomers coming in, and I'm one of them, and I also care for an older relative, my mother-in-law, who's 90. So I wish I had known more about you or that, type of expert that could guide you through the process, because we were in crisis mode, when we were trying to get her some, housing assistance in that, because she had a dementia diagnosis. So it seems like people could really, do well by getting the kind of services, the type of services that you and others offer,
Right.
in this respect. Is there a cost to these services?
No, we are paid by senior living providers. So assisted living communities, memory care communities, in-home care services, they pay our fees, not the senior or the family.
Okay, so what types of housing, and again, we've done housing programs before, but I don't think we can say enough what they are, because as this burgeoning group of people come in and have those needs or have those lifestyle changes, they really need to be aware of what's out there and what might be appropriate for them. So what's the progression of housing, or what types of housing exist?
So in our area, we have life plan communities, and formerly they were known as CCRCs, or continuing care retirement communities. These are communities that have all levels of care on one campus. So usually pretty large campus, has independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing all on that same campus. So we have those. We have independent living communities, so communities that, that can be viewed as senior apartments, but just with a little extra services. For support and, somebody to be in the community 24 hours, so that if the senior needed help at 3 a.m, someone's there. Assisted living communities. So this is where someone starts to need more personal assistance on a day-to-day basis. So we call them activities of daily living, ADLs. So things like bathing, dressing, medication reminders. So assisted living supports people that need those type of services throughout the day. Memory care is specific to those with dementia or other memory-related disorders. So often the community is secured in case of a wandering concern. So we also have in our area called supportive living facilities.
What is supportive living? I've heard of that.
Yeah.
And I've heard of memory care, and you think, well, isn't supportive of people living in memory care?
I often say I wish supportive living was called something else, because it's twofold, the support. So supportive living is basically assisted living that is subsidized by the state. So the support comes in the form of assistance, hands-on care, assistance with bathing and dressing, like I said before, but also a financial support as well. So what happens is the state takes the client's Social Security check and leaves them with about $90 a month. So these communities are where they are. So sometimes people will say, well, isn't that one a supportive living community? And is that one? So there are more private pay communities in our area than there are supportive living communities.
So it's interesting that you say that, because you said the Chicago market in our area is saturated. And when you say saturated, do you mean that it's just they're full to capacity, or they're saturated in the sense that there's just a lot of them out there?
There's a lot of them out there.
Okay,
Yeah.
but a lot more that you're saying. So there's levels of care and levels of pay, apparently.
Right.
So you're saying that there's independent living, private pay, assisted living, private pay, and then the nursing homes, private pay as well?
Some, and that you can private pay, or if, we have to find Medicaid on the campus for some of our clients. So when we meet with our clients, we go over that financial piece a little bit to determine, are we going a private pay only route, or should we look at the supportive living Medicaid route, so that we're, making the right decision, so that there's not a move just a few years down the road because we didn't plan, effectively in the beginning.
So would you say that there are, because I see them all over, and you think, oh, this is a good one, or maybe, this would be ideal for my mother-in-law. But depending on, because you're talking about levels of care, right? So, well, maybe let's go back and just touch on that a little bit again. So, if what are the levels of care that, like for independent living? Is there care available? I'm going to move into an independent living place in my own apartment.
Right.
What is there a level of care there?
So there is. I mean, sometimes the senior might just want someone around, someone to respond to an emergency. I feel dizzy. I'm not feeling well today. I took my blood pressure and it's way high today. So that's isolating and lonely and scary to be completely alone and not have someone, right at a phone call or right outside the door. So some seniors just are looking for that extra layer of support in terms of someone is right there if I need it. It can go a step further. I need help with meals. I don't like cooking anymore. I would like assistance with housekeeping. I can't seem to keep up with the house anymore. So it would be helpful to have housekeeping for myself, activities, socialization, to have that at my fingertips. I find it hard to, especially in the winter, get in the car and go to the nearest senior center. That's more difficult. So maybe having that kind of right outside my door would also be helpful. So it's really a matter of what the client needs at that time and what you are willing to take advantage of. Because just because it's there doesn't mean you have to take advantage of if you're not ready. But if you are ready and do need that level and that extra support with, meals and housekeeping and activities and transportation at your fingertips, it's there too.
Well, and I know we talk a lot about, too, there's a lot of seniors that want to stay in place. Their house is paid off. They're afraid to move because they're taking on something else or familiar with their own house. But from what you're saying, it sounds like we need, it's great that people can do that and stay in their homes and still take care of their homes. But as I know myself, we have a home and a yard, and it's getting to be a little much for me at times to take care of my yard and everything else. So it's, I'm starting to think more about maybe we can get that kid down the street to do some of this stuff. So I think that, you're talking about, on one hand, there's an isolation factor that if they're living alone or maybe a spouse dies and they can't keep up the house, or, you're just starting to think about down the road a piece.
Right.
It's already getting a little difficult for me. Am I going to want to change that circumstance and see what's available to me? And maybe just remove some of that stigma, that might be attached to making that move. It's not about I'm going to the nursing home. It's more about what's available out there.
Exactly, and it's that stigma, that nursing home is old. It's not like that anymore these days. So
would you say that's changed over time?
It's especially recently because most of our population in I think it's the year 2030 is going to be 65 and over. That's going to be the majority of our population. So the senior living communities now are preparing for that. So they are, you're not seeing even though the clinical portion of senior living is there, so we can, often do sliding scale diabetics. We can give shots. We can, give eye drops and things like that. With the rules and regs of the Illinois, we need a nurse to do that. So even though that clinical piece is in senior living communities, we don't necessarily want it to look clinical. So you're seeing that, maybe the nurses are, dressed in just nice plain clothes. They don't necessarily wear scrubs anymore. Or a community might have stainless appliances in the apartments and granite countertops and things like that that appeal to the boomer generation. which is coming.
It's there. I'm there. I'm one of them, And having been around looking a little bit myself, when my mother-in-law, when we were looking for a place for her, and just, kind of touring around doing what I do, it's the settings, as you're saying, are much nicer, much more homey feeling.
Right.
And I think that does take some of the stigma away. And it's, and again, it's just realizing, where am I at with my life now? How long can I do this? And what assistance do I need? And how social do I want to be too?
Right.
Because
Sure.
And you were saying some of the places maybe offer transportation to get to some of the places.
Right.
Because I know some seniors, they might even have, when you were talking about cooking, might have like macular degeneration, like an eye disease that doesn't allow them to see what they're cooking.
Right.
Something
Right.
that prevents them from being really safe when they're cooking. So that takes some of the, some of the
Right.
load off of them as well.
Right. And too, with in-home care can sometimes be a bridge to senior living. So for that person that, is having a hard time cooking, having a hard time keeping up with the home, grocery shopping, especially, like I said, in the wintertime, having an in-home caregiver can help in that time period where you're maybe deciding, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay here, or do I want to move to senior living? But I need help in the meantime. So we can help people find good in-home care providers too.
Oh, that's interesting to know too. Mm-hmm. So you have kind of your finger on some of the local experts that can help
Right.
within their home while they're still, like
Right.
you say, still deciding. It is a big decision. But I think a lot of people too, if they have family members, but maybe they live out of state. So
Right,
it's not as
right.
convenient for them to be up close and personal to understanding what's going on with the parent on a day-to-day basis. So it's just something else to really think about these days.
Exactly.
I think families used to live a little closer together.
Yeah.
And now they're a lot more far-flung, and, it's not as you want that support system around you.
Sure, for sure.
Wow. So would you say that the programs and staffing are similar from place to place or different? Especially in the assisted livings and,
Yeah. I would say for the most part they're similar. However, some assisted living communities will take their care level a little further than others. Some have an assisted living license. Some have a sheltered care license. Sheltered care is a kind of a step above assisted living. It's not better or worse, one or the other. It just is what it is. It means something different according to the rules and regs of Illinois. So a sheltered care license can almost be looked at as a level between assisted living and skilled nursing. So that's part of what we know is, the differences between the communities and which ones will sort of take their care level a little bit further than the next one. So it's, like I said, not better or worse. It just is appropriate for certain people, based off.
That's interesting to know because I think sometimes people are maybe not quite suited to assisted living anymore, but not really ready for a nursing home situation. And so it's good to know that there might be some out there. So you really have a kind of a line on really what's out there,
right?
And what the different places offer and the type of level of care.
Right.
And do you base that on each individual family? And
for sure, absolutely. You have to. Someone could also be very, very independent-minded, but need a lot of physical assistance. So we need to find a community then that is able to meet the needs for that physical help that's required, but also has an activity department that provides stimulating activities for someone that, is still interested in, hearing a lecture series or, something that's super interesting that they've brought in and a learning experience or even a class. We're beyond bingo.
yeah,
I mean, bingo is still there, but some communities are much beyond that, and really try to cater to the needs and the desires of all the residents there.
It seems like there's a generational thing, because when we talk about seniors, and I've said it on the show before, you're looking at maybe 55 and above, 55 to 95. That's 40 years of people being considered like senior citizens.
Right.
And so is there a generational gap there, or are they trying to understand what the needs are for each generation of seniors that reside within that?
I think so. I think that Chicagoland is doing a good job of trying to cater to each of those generations. Mm-hmm. So, we have communities like a Del Webb or a Carillon that are 55 and up and have activities for people that are looking for that socialization piece and the ease and the lifestyle. The living situation is much lower maintenance and of the home and things like that. And then maybe the folks that are in their 80s and 90s that are starting to see some of their health statuses changing. Mm-hmm. We then have for them more of that care component, but still being able to have the right socialization and engagement activities on those campuses as well.
Wow. So what absolutely disqualifies somebody from assisted living?
If they need to be lifted to get from point A to point B, or if they need two people to transfer them from point A to point B, if they need something like a continuous IV or a feeding tube, a tracheotomy, anything that is ingested into the body that requires an RN's attention and care, that's no longer appropriate for assisted living.
I know there's, I've heard a statistic, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it's a little scary that of the baby boomer generation, that 1 in 4 will have Alzheimer's. Are we seeing a lot of dementia-related, cases that are going into some of these senior living and assisted living situations?
Yeah.
And what does memory care do for them? Is that...
So, unfortunately, I was recently at a Alzheimer's luncheon, a fundraiser, and a physician from Northwestern got up and spoke, and the numbers, unfortunately, are going the wrong direction for dementia and Alzheimer's. We don't seem to have a hold on it right now. So at this point, we just need to care for those that have it, and hope that the researchers continue, the search and try to find, what it is. If we can identify it earlier in people, maybe that would lead to how it became about, how we got there. So in caring for seniors right now, with it is that memory care component in some communities, and some communities that you see popping up in Chicago that's what they do is memory care. So the entire community is memory care.
Is memory care primarily in private pay institutions, or is it available in supportive care, which is subsidized?
We don't have many in memory care communities within the supportive living piece, that subsidized piece. Mm-hmm. They're few and far between in Chicagoland, unfortunately. So that is a kind of a gaping hole that we need, fixed. We do have private pay memory care communities, obviously. Communities that are designed for people with memory loss are very specific in nature to support that disease process. So from the type of activities that they do, the length of the activities that they do, the colors on the walls are often calming, where the color of the wall in the bathroom is totally different, bright, deep color that signifies to someone that something different happens in that room than any other room. A lot of communities now will have almost a GPS system on the ceiling of the resident's studio room, And so at 3 a.m., if there's someone getting up to move around, staff is alerted that someone is getting up and that, they should be attended to. So we try to engage the residents throughout the day, keep them busy so that anxiety, ruminating, concerns are kept at bay so that, the resident is at ease and feeling calm and comfortable throughout the day.
Yeah, another interesting thing to know, you wouldn't think that colors and, different types of reminders that might ring a bell with someone who has dementia. And just briefly, can you tell me, who makes the decisions for that resident? Who makes those decisions and who do you deal with directly?
So when I first talk to a family member, usually it's the power of attorney that calls. Typically it is. So that, the power of attorney of their loved one or friend or whoever it might be to that person is calling me to get some guidance and assistance through the process. We usually, too, recommend that maybe the senior talk to an elder law attorney before reaching us, just to make sure that there is a power of attorney in place and that all their documents are in order. And also maybe even talking to a financial planner prior to talking to us.
That makes sense.
To determine, if I'm able to give them the costs of senior living, to then base that off of their assets to determine, which way should we go? Are we going private pay or should we look at a possible Medicaid option in the future? So it's usually the adult child that we work with. And then once the family tours the community, the nursing staff of the community then steps in to assess the resident and determine which level of care is best for them.
Okay, well, I appreciate your outlining that. And then, again, we're getting ready to wind up, but I want to make sure, I know that you were talking about dementia-friendly communities. Can you briefly tell us a little bit about that and why that's important?
So dementia-friendly communities are basically communities like Downers Grove, especially, when seniors and their families might be shopping in downtown Downers Grove, but to have a little bit of understanding about dementia and what it is, not to fear it, but to include people with dementia and realize that they're still there. They still have needs and likes and dislikes and desires, and that, maybe a business has some grab bars or ramps to make it easier for seniors to, get into their store. Maybe the manager has been trained on people with dementia and how to approach them. Make sure to approach them from the front. Make sure to, look them in the eye and speak loudly enough to help them carry their items as they shop or to ask if they need help. So just being open and inclusive to people with dementia. So it's we have a large population of seniors in Downers Grove. So I think it would be, a good thing to consider.
Well, thank
for
you for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for coming today. There's so much more we could even be talking about, but thanks again.
Thank
Kari,
you
for
very
being
much
here today.
Thanks.
All right.